the public hearing of June 18th, 2018. We get a roll call.
Sure. Mr. Cox is absent. Mr. Giavone?
Here.
Mr. Westbrooks?
Here.
Mr. Velada?
Here.
All right, first and only item is the proposed oversized pole barn located at 8524 Shepherd Road. Is there anyone here from the public that wishes to speak for or against this? I guess you guys have the opportunity to present during the regular meeting, but it is.
Correct.
If there's anybody else here, there's not, but I can ask the question. No one here. Speak on this. Accept the motion to close the public hearing. What do you guys? Just make a motion.
I'll make a motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. So public hearing is closed, and being that it's 2 minutes till 5:30, we'll just start a regular meeting. So I'll call to order the regular scheduled planning commission meeting of June 18th, 2018. Get a roll call.
Mr. Cox is absent. Mr. Westbrooks?
Here.
Mr. Giavone?
Here.
Mr. Velada?
Here.
First item is approval of the May 22nd, 2018 minutes. Anybody have any comments or corrections or anything? I believe we're all here. Yes. I didn't see anything.
We accept the minutes as. I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Minutes. First item on the agenda, it's the proposed oversized pole barn at 8524 Shepherd Road. You guys like to come on up and see at the table? Could you get your names?
I'm Neil Wolf, Neil Construction.
All right. Why don't you just give us a quick overview of what you're planning, either whoever wants to speak to it. Go ahead.
Mr. Durham would like to add a 30 wide by 40 deep pole barn in the way back of his backyard. His next door neighbor has a similar identical pole barn from two seasons ago, I believe. Today I got the letter from Susan Roganish, and if my architect has to draw in water drainage and a French drain so that the water management stays on his premises, I have no objection at all with that. This letter from Susan, the comment section, said that the scale was 0.60 instead of the matching scale on his site plan. And what you're looking at there, Tom gave me a site plan 8.5 by 11. Either my architect copied it and blew it up, or by blowing it up, changed the scale. Okay, which is what I think was the case. I can have my architect make the site plan to match what he drew on the architectural drawings. I can confirm to the board that the roofing and the siding is going to match what is on the existing dwelling now. And I thought that might have been listed, but if it's not, I can confirm that and give that to you in written format. And if it was just the water management and the revised site plan, Tom and I would kindly ask the board if they could give us a provisional approval pending the new plans being given to you. And we'd appreciate not waiting 1 month more. That seems to be the only issues.
Well, Mr. Francis, would you like to go through, for the record, go through your comments, or summarize, or?
Sure.
However you'd like to do it.
Sure. The applicant's request is for a 30 by 40 detached accessory garage on their property, 8524 Shepherd, 1,200 square foot. I think the house is about 2,000-ish square feet roughly, a little more than 2,000 square feet. Does that sound about right?
24 or something.
Yeah, so no concern about the size of the structure, no concern about percent of lot coverage. It's a 5-acre lot, so there's plenty of space. There's an additional shed in the rear yard, which is fine. There's 2 permissible on the property. No concern there. However, if you were to want to have a 3rd accessory structure, you'd have to remove one of those 2, which I'm assuming you remove the small one.
I believe the shed's gonna go when this gets approved.
Okay. And if that's the case, that's fine. There's no requirement that says you can't keep it, but if you were to go do something else with another accessory structure, you wouldn't be able to until it is eliminated. I'm assuming your deck is attached, you're attaching your deck to the house, so it's not accessory then, so that's good. There is the sort of the larger issue. It's not quite as simple as the 60 scale and stormwater. Those are 2 items that I noted in my report, but the setback, you're proposing a 5-foot side yard setback, and you need 10 feet according to the code.
And we will do 10 feet.
Okay. Do you have survey grade? Is it a survey grade site plan that you're using? Because when you're putting it to the, to the absolute distance, the minimum distance for the setback, I start to get a little concerned, especially with stormwater and citing accessory structures, that you're using actual survey information versus just GIS information from like Summit County GIS.
Well, we're using the site plan that was done when we purchased the house approximately 2 years ago.
Was it a mortgage survey or?
Yes.
So it's not a boundary survey, so that is concerning.
I am planning to have a boundary survey done so that those lines are known prior to really being.
Yeah, and you could, once you have that boundary survey, I don't know who's gonna do it, but they can transmit that information to your architect who can use it on the site plan. Just for our sake, it's making sure, because it is built to the minimum, that you're meeting that setback requirement, 1, and then 2, for the purposes of the engineer when it comes time with the stormwater and such, to make sure you're not draining, and that's it's a small side yard setback you're providing. You're not draining onto the neighboring property.
Yeah, the slope just flows across our yard away from that 10-foot setback. So the slope actually goes the other way.
Okay.
If that matters to your water issue.
I mean, it will to the engineer once he has that information. So I mean, you're essentially building what's equivalent to a small house in a garage. So it requires, it's large enough that it's going to require a site plan with topography and drainage calculations, in my opinion. Again, if you're confirming the setback of 10 feet, you just need to document that on a site plan that's a survey grade site plan. And then you confirm the materials. I had that question about, it looks like it's clad in vinyl with asphalt shingle roof, if that matches the house.
Correct.
And it sounds like it does. The house is a vinyl clad house.
Yes.
Okay. And then the colors, same thing. And then we have another consultant here this evening who looked at the architecture as well. I had a comment about considering requiring more windows or an architectural element on the side elevation facing the north, particularly as it's a large building facade, a large building wall, very close to a side property line. Oftentimes, Macedonia doesn't require it, but oftentimes zoning codes will allow for a greater setback for large walls facing a side yard. They do that because it just gives a greater distance to the neighboring property line for privacy and such. We don't have that requirement, but I think from an architectural standpoint, it would make a big difference to add some element or add windows facing that side yard, in my opinion. And then we already covered the scale issue, however it got there, it's just off a little bit. So when we're dealing with, again, the minimums, we want to make sure our scale is spot on. So those are the comments I had. I felt that it should be tabled at this time, principally because there were a number of issues, but the biggest being the setback issue. This commission can't approve it with that setback. So I guess, given the new information you're providing, they can make that decision accordingly.
And I can catch up on the new site plan that it will say a 10-foot side setback.
And again, I would encourage the city to, again, have a survey grade site plan so we can confirm that 10 feet is actually 10 feet. I looked at the GIS, the Summit County GIS, those property lines could be off upwards of, I found them to be off in actual on-the-ground situations up to 25 feet. Now, I'm not suggesting that's the case in yours, but I've seen that in Summit County, so that's where my concern comes in. Just make sure we're working off actual survey information. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right. I see you're, on the north side, you mentioned architectural.
Element, features.
The north side of the majority of the north side of the building will face woods.
I thought it faces, maybe I gave you the wrong direction. I thought it faced your neighbor, which faces,
Yes,
isn't it, your north?
the close neighbor to the north will be mostly, well, maybe 2/3 of the building will be adjacent to woods. It is the neighbor's woods, but it's woods nonetheless.
Yeah, I thought when I looked at an aerial, I didn't take note of a
Yeah,
swath of trees
the
there.
existing shed that's, you looked at on the aerial will go because this building will be built basically, the front of this building will be approximately where the front of the existing shed is.
Okay.
And that shed right now has woods immediately behind it. I think it's 12 feet deep, so.
But I believe you're coming in on the side elevation that faces the garage of the neighbors.
Yeah, but this whole building will be completely behind the neighbor's garage. That's what I'm saying. I don't know if you're looking at differences on the aerial dimension, you know. But the existing shed is 100 feet from, if you're looking at the aerial, the front of the existing shed is 100 feet off the back of the house. And that's the proposed, if you look at this, that's the site plan, that's the proposed beginning of this building. So the front of this building will start approximately where the existing shed starts. And again, if you look on that Google Maps or whatever, there's woods immediately behind the shed, and it's a 12-foot deep shed. So I can put windows in there and look at the deer if you want me to, but it's kind of necessary, I would say.
It's actually, it's more for your neighbor for aesthetics purposes than it is for you to look out at the deer.
The deer are the neighbor right there,
Yeah.
because it's woods.
Well, but that is no guarantee those woods are always going to be there either.
Right.
Yeah. I was thinking some sort of an architectural element, just so it's not a long, because I think that's the 40-foot, right?
So could
It's
you
a
define
40-foot
what else-
long.
What qualifies as an architectural?
Any sort of a roof line change, gable or otherwise. There's, generally those are the easiest and most cost effective. And again, we have a designer here who may have some more comments about that, but generally those are fairly cost effective to do that and have a small gable on that elevation.
A gable in the middle of the 40 feet.
Something to break up that long, expansive wall. Right now, it's just a small window.
Would you rather have that, or would you rather have more windows?
That honestly is entirely up to the property owner. Again, it's to break up the expanse of that wall.
There was one remark in the letter that I read this morning. There was a question as to why the two different styles of garage doors.
That was,
That was my comment.
Okay, I can answer that.
Okay.
The 8x7 is a regular steel insulated garage door. The 10x10 is a rolled commercial garage door because the homeowner plans on putting a lift with 3,000 PSI concrete marked on the drawings behind that door. And
So I need the overhead space, I can't have the door.
What's the lift for?
I have some classic automobiles.
And that, so from a zoning perspective, that's fine. And I would encourage the commission, if the commission approves the application, that you add a stipulation that no business can be run from that particular facility, because then it becomes a use violation, and then this guy has to send you letters, and it gets uncomfortable, and you go to court. And the city's pretty serious about cracking down on a lot of that stuff, so I would just add that as a stipulation. If it's your own personal classic vehicles, there's no problem with that, but you know, you wouldn't be able to like run a body shop or open up shop to do work in there.
You wouldn't want me to do body work on my car.
Yeah, it's
He needs a
okay.
mechanic.
Fair enough. Or change brakes or tires for somebody, either way, but yeah, just from a use standpoint, you can't do that.
Michelle, would you like to go over here?
Well, the only thing I would add to Brian is that considering a shed-type roof or some kind of three-dimensional addition to the front elevation above the man door.
the gable is going to look like this when you're looking at the front of the garage.
Mm-hmm.
So if you wanted to put a lower shed over the garage doors.
Not the garage doors, just the man door.
Oh, over the man door?
Over the man
Oh,
door.
I have no problem.
That would be great.
It would be a shed, a gable,
A gable.
a gable, yes. That
The
would be
mayor
better.
loves gables.
Yeah, I don't like sheds.
That's the only additional.
That would be.
Mr. Valadi, would you like to? Sure.
Thanks, Chairman. Just two comments. One, you already touched on the stormwater. If your idea is to create a French drain or an underground sump of some sort to try to recharge the water into the ground, not shed it across the property and potentially onto a neighbor's property, that's fantastic. Show that on your updated plan, and we should be good. I would think the commission would be agreeable to that as well. And then the only other thought is this property, is this a part of Rolling Hills subdivision, or is it a completely standalone piece of property?
I don't believe it is. I have no homeowners association, if that's where it is.
That's where I was going, yeah, because if it was a part of a subdivision with a homeowners association, then, you know, that would be up to you to,
HOA approved.
you got it, yep. So that's all I had, Chairman.
All right. Commissioner members, do you guys questions?
Or how are we gonna resolve the like setback?
I'm gonna change it to 10.
You're gonna change it.
We agree. We have plenty of room with
Yeah,
5 feet.
Okay.
We did have a couple of, this, Chris, we just go over those. Comments from the administration as well. They're just asking you, what is the use of the structure? And it sounds like it's,
Storage. I'm about to have 3 kids and lots of toys. I have too many toys of my own.
but again, no, you're not planning any kind of business
No.
out of this garage.
Mr. Chairman, on
Yes.
Chapter 1341.03, requirements for approval, the city is asking that you have bricked grade on that building. You can't just run the siding or whatever is on that building down to the bottom. On the footer, there would be brick up, so high to grade, and then start the siding or whatever you're going to use for the exterior of the building.
So like, how high are you with the utilities?
The code only says brick grade, and administration says brick to grade, so I'm not sure exactly what the building looks like or how high to go.
So it's a pole building, it's supposed to be just supposed to be frame building, so.
Is it gonna be a complete footer?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry,
It
no,
might
I'm
just
sorry.
be a pad.
It's gonna be post.
Brick to grade, not a footer.
Yeah, so there's no footer and there's no concrete block
Right.
Right, it's just a
foundation,
pad.
so.
Because the administration wants brick to grade on all residential buildings and structures.
But I would think that would refer to footers where you had block.
You have to attach it to something, some sort of a brick ledge attached to a footer.
You know how you do it with pole barn.
I don't know how you do it with a pole barn.
You say full foundations brick to grade.
For a pole barn?
South 241.03.
Is it, if they have a foundation?
But you can't.
Yeah. Where?
Well, does it specify that it has to be? But it doesn't have cinder block. It says only if it's exposed.
But they're not gonna have cinder block.
Correct,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right, but only if there's a cement.
Yeah, I think it's only,
Poured basements,
yeah.
which is not poured basement.
It doesn't seem applicable in this case because you're not going to have a
Block
foundation. Yeah, and that is, so if you do have a foundation, you can't have exposed block. In this case,
I think
you have
that's
to
what's
run
there.
it brick to grade, but that's up to the commission. That's a building code requirement as opposed to planning and zoning code.
I would like to add, does anyone know what the home looks like? Because I do have photographs I can show the board.
I do.
Okay, because, and I don't know this for sure, no argument intended. The next door neighbor who went through this 2 years ago and has a similar pole barn, has post-construction, no block, no brick. And you'd want the siding to come maybe 6 inches from the grass so that you don't see posts. I think it would look more aesthetic.
I'm only relaying the information for administration at the city, and they're requesting full foundation with brick to grade.
So if we have to request a variance off of that,
Yeah, is that a requirement? My neighbor just, a couple summers ago, built, and his has got a loft storage area, it's like 2 story.
It seems to me that I don't know what the commission wants to do about the application. You do have, understanding the applicant wants to get started on it, right? And I get it. Take advantage of the good weather. But, you know, there's some issues. You're asserting that you'll comply with a 10-foot setback, which is good. The commission could approve it subject to that with confirmation administratively. I'm recommending that it be survey grade information, so there's no confusion that you're actually getting 10 feet, because when you're building it right to the minimum, that gets dangerous because the building inspector will come out, or the zoning inspector will come out to certify where you're putting that on the property. It needs to be 10 feet. And he needs to base that on something. Typically that's monuments that surveyor puts in. The commission could approve this all subject to that, as well as this issue of concern about this requirement about the building code. If the commission wanted to make it subject to confirmation, if that's a standard, it sounds like the applicant doesn't want to do that. and would be seeking some sort of an exception. That's not from this body. It's not from the Board of Zoning Appeals as well, because they can't vary the building code. That has to be the Board of Building Standards, I believe, at the state. Mr. Chavone, you certainly could shed more light on that than I could. But I don't think that's a standard that can be waived by the BZA. They don't have jurisdiction over the building code. So you can make it subject to those things if you were so inclined.
Okay. And I've been telling you, I've had my company for 42 years. I've never done a pole barn with a full footer.
I understand. So there's enough outstanding issues to the applicant that you need to do some homework and have the architect put together some numbers, if they're comfortable doing the stormwater calculations. I'm not sure what Mr. Gelati's looking for, but you can contact.
Yeah, no, I think we're just looking for, we're just looking to show the French drain or the dry sump on the plans to show that you're directing the roof drains into that feature, into the ground, so it doesn't shed off.
If we, as Mr. Frank said, if we could have a provisional approval to spare another meeting 1 month down the road,
Mhm.
that I can guarantee the board that we'll do the deck first, submit the revised drawing showing the French drain,
Mhm.
so that all the water goes down to the earth's water table, showing that it's 10 feet off the property line, no issue there, showing the matching exterior finishes with the existing dwelling. And if we could do that once the revised documents are submitted and spare another meeting, I've got time to satisfy Mr. Durham with the construction of the deck, and by that time, Nino Monaco or someone will approve and say, yep, everything has been submitted, go forward.
Couple of comments. Just want to verify what you're saying, Mr. Hall, that a pole barn has to have a continuous foundation with brick up to grade?
That's what the building code, I believe, is saying, and that's what the administration of the city has
Is that
said.
the code is staying now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah,
But
the only
it
reason I
does-
mentioned it because it's kind of unusual, I'm very honest, I haven't seen that too often with a pole barn. Number two, and that has to be resolved, I think they're verified, is that correct, or are you
I've talked to
positive
the
that's
building
it?
commissioner. I'll talk to the building commissioner.
Okay,
And
okay, that's one issue that's been resolved. The other one is, on the site plan, I think what you're looking for, if you contact the surveyor, you want to, I think they're called Alta surveys, basically, okay? And basically, it outlines the property, shows the property lines and everything, and it gives dimensions to the building, the existing buildings, and any proposed structures. And you can tell him to put on there what you propose and where it's going to go, including the drainage facility. That should be done with sizes, okay? You just can't say we're gonna put a French drain in here, blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
It's gotta be so deep, so long, what kind of gravel goes in it, okay? Things like that, where the downspouts are gonna tie into it, okay? I think those are the two chief, items that you have to be concerned with. The other thing I'm looking at, and it's maybe it's not a minor point, but I'm looking at this, you have headers over your doors, and it's not quite clear how they're attached. It looks like you only have 2 carriage bolts attaching the headers to 6x6 posts. And you're gonna hang anything else, I don't know how heavy these roll-up doors are, but I think that ought to be looked at a little bit.
They're actually lighter than the typical steel insulated door, because I had driven, Tom knows this, I had driven to Akron to get my homework and discuss with the engineer from Overhead Door located in Akron. And two things shocked me, because one comment was it's lighter than a regular door, and the second comment was it's $3,600. And
Well, my point is the connection to the posts.
the header's connection to the post. We'll do as many bolts as,
Well, okay, that's not up to me right now.
well, my architect's partner is a PE.
Okay.
And so he is the engineer that
That's
could,
what I would like to ask, I think should be shown on there.
Okay.
That's kind of critical. Okay.
So what exactly?
how many anchor bolts to each.
You typically show a section, and also, I think on page 3, you say there's 2 5/8-inch bolts to the top plate, whatever, blah, 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 whatever. I think that should be looked at, and the connection to that.
They got you header connection to post.
Oh, I see.
Joe or Brian, I'm guessing for something typically this size and issues like that, is this something typically you see a PE stamped plan, or is that required, or is that recommended?
You mean a PE stamped site plan?
No, but the.
Or are you talking about the architectural plans?
Architectural or, yeah.
I mean, I would think that the architect, by putting his stamp on it, would, you know, he's certifying that the structural calculations are correct.
This is
You know,
green-
the architect may use a PE to help him with the design, but if the architect puts his stamp on it, I think that satisfies the city.
And Green Line Design, which is here in Stowe.
Say that again, I'm sorry?
Green Line Design.
Okay.
Gordon Kozlow, and the PE is Jim Titness.
Okay.
Not a single room addition, garage, whatever plan is given to me without his associate, Jim Titness, sizing the beams, reviewing everything.
Mhm.
I've never had a problem
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah, and that's pretty typical of how most of those.
Professionals on these, is that, whether it's architect or engineer,
Yeah, I don't think it really matters to the city. In fact, I would expect it to be the architect's stamp, you know, because it is an architectural drawing. Like I say, if the architect brings in a PE, whether it's his partner or, you know, somebody else, to size a beam or do a structural calculation to make sure the architectural plans are complete, hey, that's fantastic. But, I mean, so long as it has the architectural stamp on there, I think that satisfies the city's requirement that you have a stamped plan that you submit.
And that's for the building permitting process, not what we're for here, which is just the site plan issue.
Yep.
And the skin, the clad of the building, that's really all we're looking at. Zoning setbacks, architectural skin, and the civil matters regarding drainage and such is what we, you know, can focus on here.
So based on that, I believe we're all in agreement.
Well, based on that, you have outstanding issues. You have a site plan that's not to scale. You have a site plan that doesn't show a 10-foot. You asserted that you would meet those requirements.
Yes.
I'm saying to my commission that that's all fine and good, but I want it on a survey grade site plan. So it's dead nuts, if you will,
Mhm.
correct?
Mhm.
The question is, in this outstanding issue of the brick to grade can be solved, in my opinion, outside of the purview of the planning commission. They can make it subject to confirmation if that's a required standard or not. If it is, you need to figure out what you want to do. Doesn't sound like we're gonna have a pole barn that's brick to grade. So you just have to figure out what you do with that. But I think that issue can be solved outside of the planning commission's purview.
Mr. Friend, you had mentioned that that is the case, that that's not something the BZA could grant a variance.
I don't believe so. It's in the building code. They have purview over the planning and zoning code.
You'd have a unique pole barn.
I don't know that it's unique or not, but I think any structure that size, I think warrants, number one, some type of
That's what I was
professional
saying.
stamp on it.
That's
This is what it
I
looks
think
like.
that's one. And I think you need a site plan, or a site plan prepared by a surveyor. Now, one thing he will do, if you get an multi-survey, what he will do is on that survey, is locate the nearest adjacent building on the other lot to show how close it is, okay? Whether it's 1,000 feet away, 5 feet away, They'll put something on there,
I added
saying
a
the
little
next
bit,
building
he's
is
gonna
like
add a
5 feet,
gable roof.
or they'll put whatever, I want to say the next building is
No,
like
he's
10
gonna add
miles
a
away.
gable,
There's no
and
problem.
door.
So everybody knows where everything is on the plan. You see what I'm saying?
And Mr. France, I, always thinking, I do have another suggestion. On the bottom 2-3 feet of the structure, what if I have brick looking vinyl siding? I can show you a beautiful example of what I have in the next suburb, Bedford Heights. We put a garage on top of a roof, tore off the roofing infrastructure, and when we were doing our construction, the brick pillars fell off from all the hammering. So when I show people the photograph, which I can show you, I said, isn't that beautiful brick? And everyone says, yes, it is. And then I tell them, it's vinyl siding,
Yeah.
because it looks so real.
Yeah, I mean, that's an architectural issue. I mean, that's,
See the material.
yeah, we have to see it.
I'd like to see the material.
You have very little brick on the front of your house, right?
You have stone?
Some stone.
I don't know what you call it.
It's probably, I mean, it looks like
Yes.
Cultured stone.
cultured or field stone or something.
Yes, fieldstone.
Yeah, I mean, you know, why don't you, again, I think that issue,
It's fieldstone.
yeah, I think that issue, and the house is vinyl. So I think that issue is outside of the purview of the planning commission, and you could make it subject to confirmation of that standard, Mr. Chairman, if that's what you're inclined to do, but I'm not sure you can hold that up at this point. It's a building code requirement.
I think outside of that issue, which, yeah, needs to be decided, needs to be figured out, confirmed, just looking at the other issues, to me, mostly because of the size of the thing, this is a very sizable building. It's square footage wise bigger than the first floor of my house. I think, I would like to see all these things that we've talked about be documented before I would like to vote on it. Between the size and the survey and the grading and the drainage, all the things that we've agreed to, the setbacks, the feature over the door, all these things, I think there's enough of them that I don't know if I would like giving a conditional approval with 10 outstanding items. I would like to see a table come back with the full documentation. I hate to slow you down. I know it's middle of June here and you'd love to have this thing get going.
I just
But
get yelled at when I'm starting in November.
Well, you know, Mr. Chairman, can I just add, one of the things I think Susan is going to talk to you about tonight is perhaps a potential special meeting for the Cleveland Clinic. And so maybe the applicant could talk to Susan and find out if that happens and maybe make it a dual purpose meeting.
Could look into it, but I guess the turnaround to get stuff submitted would be very, very
Mhm.
quickly. For a meeting that's 2 weeks away, would be like
By the end of the
next,
week.
yeah, next couple of days.
Yeah, it probably doesn't
To get
work.
stuff submitted, because we have to have time to get it in, distributed, reviewed.
My architect would comply, but the survey grade site plan, I have
It's
no.
gonna be difficult.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
So I think we're probably, the only reason the Cleveland Clinic is ready is their submittal is ready. They just couldn't have them here tonight. So it probably is looking at the next meeting, I'm guessing. But I don't know what you guys feel. I think there's enough outstanding issues I'd like to see it come back.
I agree with your comment.
Do you think so?
I
So
agree
I'll,
also. Yeah, well, I think the point you made at the beginning is paramount. That this is a substantially sized building. If it was somewhat smaller, I think there would be no problem. A building of this size, I think these things are warranted for that type of structure. Okay, you're sinking some money into this thing, and to do all expression, do it right.
When is the next meeting?
July.
July.
I can't remember the date, must be on Friday.
I think July.
So then I do have one request of. the
July
board.
16th.
16th.
So it's earlier because the first Monday is the 2nd, so it's earlier in the month.
So I do have one request, and I might as well bring it up now. Can we have a little leeway? We have to have everything turned in 14 days before the meeting. Can we have a little leniency there because my architect can comply, no problem, probably Friday or Monday, but boy, am I afraid to talk about the turnaround of a survey, which is beyond my control.
So I guess 14 days would be 2 weeks out, which gets us 2 weeks before.
July
the
4th,
meeting.
To get into, onto the July meeting, they would have to have everything submitted by the 25th of this month.
That's what I'm saying.
That's 3 weeks ahead, I guess. Is it 3 or
The
something?
deadline is,
Yeah.
what is the 25th of Monday?
25th is Monday, it's next
That's the
Monday.
deadline to get onto the July meeting.
For submittals, it's not 14, it's 21 days.
It's whatever that deadline is that we figure out
Oh,
ahead
okay.
of time.
So is there any way to possibly get a 14 day before the meeting? Because
That's up to whoever is reviewing it, if that is enough time for you to review.
Oh, it's fine by me. Whatever you guys have in terms of your
We
internal,
usually stick to the deadlines.
yeah. I mean, it should be a simple review from a site plan standpoint.
Based on the comments, it should be simple.
yeah,
It
we
should
got
be.
it tonight.
Yeah, I mean, based on my review, I mean, I have very little to review. I have no problem. If
Yeah, I mean, I think we're.
We make an
talking about,
exception.
You know, we're agreeing to the setback of 10 feet. We're gonna add the drainage calculations, and just put a note that the exterior finishings are meant to match the house.
The gable over the entry door
And a gable over the man door.
and a survey grade site plan.
And then make a decision based on, once we verify the issue with
Right,
the brick degree.
right.
It sounds like from our reviewers, we could at least get the 2 weeks from now instead of 1 week turnaround. Does that sound reasonable from review?
By what date? Can we set a date that he has to have it submitted by?
So next Monday is the 25th, and it's the 2nd, 9th, and then the meeting is the 16th. We have exactly 4 weeks, so the way it falls this month, or next month.
The meeting is Monday the 16th. If I could have until Monday, July 2nd.
It's fine with me, because I'm.
Yeah, it's fine by me.
No objection here.
You could just have them submit in an 11 by 17 format, and we can just print it. It's just, then Susan, you don't even have to worry about it. If you could just email a PDF, it'll
Yeah,
preserve the scale.
that's what I was gonna say too, in order to speed things up, if it's okay with everybody else, perhaps you can email, like Brian said, a PDF of
Yes.
it to Susan, and then she can easily and quickly distribute it to the rest of us.
I'm looking at the calendar and I'm thinking and I'm going like, he doesn't want to make this an August meeting, you know?
Yeah, right, just saying this is 2 months out. So
Yeah.
just one.
Right.
And everything you've said you agreed to, the key issue, the document, it's gotta be,
Yes.
you gotta show it in your documentation.
Sir, Mr. Bell, did you have anything on this one? No. Sorry. All right, with that, make a motion to table, so.
I make a motion.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we'll see you back here in a month. Appreciate it.
Okay,
I can't wait.
Thank you, guys.
thank you very much.
Second item, this evening is going to be the signage for the Cleveland Clinic. We're gonna have to take them off the agenda, because we won't have a quorum to do that. Mr. Cox is not here, and I have to abstain from that one. We only have 2, we need 3. Are you signing table things?
No, no, sorry.
So we'll have, Cleveland Clinic will, before we go at the end, I want to talk to you guys, see about possibly a special meeting for them. So we'll discuss that at the end. The next item is SC Fastening, 8531 South Freeway Drive. Come on up. Lay that out. And your name?
I'm David Young.
All right.
Unfortunately, the owners and this grandkids just.
Oh.
He's the cop.
Why don't you give us a brief overview of what planned here?
Well, this is the existing building. This is an add-on, just like in 15 by 87. Primarily going to be used for offices inside this building. First, but what you see in here was existing
got one
offices
here.
is what would be new offices. And the rest of it's all their business with distribution. So this is an administrative office that they want to do. And it's bound by the fact that you got a 15-foot setback, so they can't make it.
Can't get it far enough.
Otherwise, I would have rather made it bigger. It is a suppressed building, so when it gets to the permanent side, the area will be all right.
Okay.
Now, so we turned it in, and then Nino and I had a couple of conversations. It's a slightly different calculator. I think we're down to one different. Basically, this code is a little confusing in terms of warehouse and office. Because in one spot it says you can take 80% of storage, whatever that means. So when we originally did this, we called City Hall, we called, we weren't quite sure. So what we've used though is the warehouse number and the office number. That's what this table shows on this. It's slightly different than the one you have. Nino came up with a requirement of 40, we don't do. Yeah, that's been the real issue, it's the parking, how do you deal with it?
I have 27.
Yeah, so it's, you know, the office takes, take a look, can you take a look at this real quick?
Sure.
No,
No,
it's
it's
not. He
different.
has his,
We changed the table on this drawing to match
You
Nino's
sent me a
requirement.
copy of that?
No, he told me administratively he was doing it. I asked him, I sent him a note, do you want this redone? He said no.
Because usually I would get all recent
That's
bills
correct.
because I have to.
That's correct, but he said just handle it here, so I have that in email.
Can I have that copy?
Yes.
Okay, then that's the other side.
how many provided?
Well, I think what we have provided is 34, but we have 8 bank. So if we had to use the 8 bank, we could.
I went off the county's website, and it showed, and it took a 20% reduction, which is allowed.
That's what I did on the first set that I submitted to you.
And I show 18,032 square feet of then warehouse space,
This is a little more accurate.
which is 23 spaces.
Yeah.
So you're telling me you have less warehouse and more office?
Well, I'd say this is pretty accurate.
Yeah, again, I know, I just quickly looked at that.
The total building is 25,118.
23,845 with your, unless you're not paying taxes on,
I don't know what he's doing with that. We went out and measured the building, so that's what you have in your. I don't know what he's paying taxes on. I didn't look at that.
yeah, he's paying taxes on 22,540.
Well, okay, that might, this building had an addition on it before. And whether the county ever caught up with it, I don't know. There's an addition built onto the back of this.
Yeah.
So that might have been what happened. So at any rate, we went out and measured all the elevations, because those didn't comply with the plans he gave me. So we verified that, and that this does comply. So this A2.
But I guess, anyway, Nino said it was 41.
No, he said it's 40, I say
Okay,
it's
40.
39, and we have.
He said 40, you said 39, Brian says 27.
Again, that was just based on.
Right, but based on, what you've got, you've actually got, how many are out there? 34 out there,
34 with eight bank.
including the 8 bank?
No.
Okay, so, I mean, you're at 42,
Yes, correct.
including the banked parking,
Yes.
I think you're there.
I think
No
we're there,
matter
too.
whose calculation it is.
Well, Nino says we're there, I say we're there, I think you say we're there, so I think we're okay.
I think you're
But
there.
what was, and we've been discussing a non-issue.
I think so.
Well, no, I think
I
you have to
think
be
we're
right.
documented.
I would agree. Just stripe it.
Yeah, I think that's, Brian can go through his comments in a second, but I think as long as it's striped for what you,
Yeah, this is
What
all
you
paved,
plan.
it doesn't have striping, but these are the 10 by 20 spaces in your code.
There used to be
Yeah.
a drive-by distribution place.
These are, depending on how your code reads it, angle parking, straight parking, whatever.
Yeah, they're 10.
These are 10 by 20.
Yeah. All I'm saying in my report is stripe it,
Yeah, that's fine.
because it's just disorganized.
I think as long as you guys can do that, stripe it,
Yeah, that's fine.
I think it sounds like there's enough parking. I think we're beating up something that you're complying.
The whole idea behind coming here wasn't to look at building code issues or anything else. It was strictly to be here to see, can this guy build this space in this town? You can either tell him yes, or you tell him no. It's a fairly small addition to this building, he'd like to do it, his kids are in the building, and he wants them to have some offices. Now, the way it gets built has nothing to do with this bookwork. For instance.
Nobody said it did.
No, but I was hearing that from the last guy, the structural element will be
Well,
handled.
don't start, I mean, you're making two issues out of something that shouldn't be an issue.
No, whatever, you're probably right.
Yeah, when you think parking's okay and you're making a big deal about it, you're talking about structural issues, no one's even brought that up yet. So
Yeah,
let's
okay.
stick to what's actually being brought up.
That's fine.
Is that addition inside the village or just offices, or are you building
Yes.
addition on the
Yeah.
outside?
On the outside,
It's on the outside, it's not an internal modification.
it's adding more square footage
It's
to it.
adding, see this space here? So it's adding 87 by slightly under 15 to get the setback.
On the east side?
South side.
South side?
South side.
You have against the property line there somewhere?
Yeah, it's 15 feet away.
So you plan on sprinkling that?
It's all sprinkled now, yeah.
So I know it's not.
Yeah, but it'll be added, yeah.
Calculations for all that.
Yep, that'll be done when we're going to that next step.
Separate.
Well, no, I think that's going to the building department, the fire suppression in the building.
Yeah, and in the,
And you.
Chris, would you like to go through the rest of your comments?
So I think we already covered item 1. Parking is
Yeah.
probably a moot point. Just, you agree, you're gonna stripe it.
Yep.
Okay, so then that should be no issue. The setback, again, looking at the county GIS system, the property lines overlap in this area. Something's goofy going on the county website. Again, I would recommend, since we're building it right up to the property line, or right up to the setback line, that you use actual survey information and not county GIS information.
Understand. We had a conversation with the city engineer, and he indicated that as part of the final submission, we would have this survey, we would have it located,
Yep.
and we have a biodetention swale that we're going to do
Perfect.
calculations on.
Yep.
Those issues will be followed once this goes to the next step.
Yep, yeah, and so from my perspective, that's fine, because you have a 15-foot setback, you're showing it, I just wanna confirm it, and that's fine at the, construction document phase, no issue
The
there.
original plans for this project show it at 15 as they were certified,
Yeah,
but I would agree with you, I'd like to test it.
yeah, I think that's only good for you,
Yeah,
you don't
I
want
agree.
trouble down the line. Then the drainage issue, we already talked about, and then I didn't know on the, well, the building addition is eliminating the green space in the back, so I wanted to know how you're gonna make up for that loss of green space, whether it's some additional shrubs or trees or otherwise.
That's what's on the first sheet.
Right here.
Oh, those are new?
Yes. There's a schedule and then there's a diagram.
You didn't get it because I.
No, it's on there, yeah, I didn't realize those were new, because when I looked at the aerial, it looked like you already had a planter bed.
Yeah, there's a planter bed right in the middle of the space where the bank parking is. And then originally, on the property, there's supposed to be, when this got approved for an addition, there's supposed to be some planting over on the south side, but that never got put in. So we're saying, okay, we're gonna screen the front of this, okay, relative to the street. It's pretty modest, the whole thing's pretty modest, but.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so I apologize, I thought that was already existing, so, yeah, I mean, what I see there is fine. I can provide some comments after the fact. I mean,
That's fine.
I might beef it up a little bit denser, but, in general, it looks fine. And then just didn't have any, are there gonna be wall packs or anything on the lighting on the back of the building? Nothing? Then that's really a moot point. So, yeah, I recommended approval of it, subject to an updated plan that kind of corrects some of the site issue to make sure it's a survey drawing that you use and meeting that 15-foot setback.
Was our understanding that submission would go to the city engineer to deal with the calculations, bioswale information, and the grading around the building just to make sure it worked? Am I
Sure.
correct in that?
Yeah, well, it goes to the building department,
Yeah,
and then
I see.
they'll share it with all of us, myself and anyone else that needs to review it.
Okay.
Yeah. We're suggesting that that's where it goes. The
No.
commission can
Yeah,
say it needs to come back, but we're suggesting it can go forward and allow it administratively reviewed.
that was my understanding.
And that's up to these guys.
Right.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Mr. Gelati, anything additional?
Yeah, not really. I mean, I think in general, we're in good shape here. You know, I don't have a problem with any of this. Their final detailed submittal will show the bioswale, the calculations for the swale, the grading, the side setback, all that type of stuff. So we should be good there. And the only other item really is just for your own knowledge, when you do have that final detailed plan ready for submittal, when you submit it to the city hall, to the building department, you also have to submit it to Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District. I've got the lady's name on there. It's a requirement by the city. Really, it's a requirement by NURSD, the sewer district. Whether or not they review it is entirely up to them, but we're required to tell the applicants that they need to submit to NURSD.
All right. Schultz.
Okay, the only comment I had was, the existing roof is going to continue.
Yes.
Is that true? And then the only other comment during a site visit was there's a man door on the side that's
Yeah,
being
that's
eliminated
probably
with
it.
some
That's-
security.
It doesn't need to be there for an exit standpoint. It might have needed to be there when it was built, because I think when it was built, it didn't have a suppression system. I got added later. So the exiting would have needed that extra door. It doesn't need it now.
But it also had like a security light.
Yeah, it might have. I don't know what word. But no, the intent was to not have the door, because the numbers work with the sprinkled building and travel.
And you're continuing the standing seam.
Yep.
To match the existing, and then you're painting the entire building,
We're
or
gonna
just?
paint at least the one side that it butts up against, yeah.
Okay.
So
Up
it
to-
should look like it's been there
Oh.
for 20 years. That's conceptually, it's not to look like an addition, it's to look like parcel to look. That's the whole idea.
Mr. Bell, anything else?
My only comment was, yeah, once the building plans were submitted, then they'll be reviewed against all of that codes.
Okay. Commission, thoughts? Additional questions?
I don't have nothing.
Now, do you want some more?
I need to they need to sign that one, whatever.
That's
the
fine.
motion is, because I don't have that.
Yeah.
So, Brian, so there was really, I mean, the stuff that everything you brought up, I think we're basically good with. Is the survey level plan can be part of the detail plan, I mean, being that's the only thing. we're
Yeah.
looking at, I think we're okay with it being part of the construction.
Sounds like I'm not hearing too many negative comments, so I mean, it'd be some sort of a motion to approve it, subject to, the parking lot being striped, final site plan being provided for the administrative review to confirm setbacks, as well as drainage calcs for the engineer. I think that's.
And that's what we discussed with you, so.
Not that I'm making your motion for it, but that's what it sounds like.
By the way, have you looked at that zoning code? Yeah, you know, kind of.
For
as a third
13
party.
years.
No, I mean, do you understand why, as an applicant, it's a little confusing? For instance, do you take?
I'm on the record, sir, I'm not gonna admit that.
Okay, do you wanna go off the record? I'm just saying, it looks a little, I do work in a lot of different places,
As do I.
and this one looks a little different. How's that?
It's different, all right.
Understood.
I'm just saying, long-term, people might wanna look at something, to make it a little clearer from, as an applicant. Okay,
Yeah, I hear you.
all right, just.
Does anyone make a motion with a few comments? Me too. I'll make a motion to approve with conditions parking lot is striped, as we had shown in the plan. Administrative review of the setbacks, drainage. I think besides that, I think we're okay. So you second? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll give the guy a call, didn't you? Okay.
Next is callers, come on up.
Seen you wanted 8 on Saturday, Friday.
Yeah, I'll be there in a couple of weeks, helping them open that one, and then, hopefully, not long after that, we'll be opening this one, so, yeah, that's exciting. I think that, all the code is written beautifully, by the way. Really enjoy it. Top here.
Do you want to give us a quick overview of what's?
I think, there's definitely a few outstanding items. Our landscape plan, I tried to sneak in at the not last minute, but a little after when you submitted the other plans that might have not gotten through. We have it, I mean, now I can submit it tomorrow or whatever, but the landscape plan and the sign plan have been updated, and they're, reflect, accurate things. I think it was just a little bit of, just negligence, for lack of a better term, on the sign package with the verbiage. But yeah, we only tend to have one sign, and there's not a second sign that's gonna be on there. And then the landscape plans are, I believe complied with everything we could possibly comply with, so. And then I've got, anything you guys wanna throw at me, I've got plenty of paper here. Hopefully got some answers for you here.
All right. Trent, should I go first?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so I haven't looked at the landscape plan, but I knew it was coming.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure, I wrote it down, comply with everything we can possibly comply with means relative to the landscape plan, but we'll do a thorough review.
Yeah.
Because there were a number of things that were outstanding relative to the landscaping, so I'm assuming do you know what hasn't been complied with?
No, I mean, it's in terms of, I mean, last time I was here, we talked about some of the stuff on the outside that you guys were, kind of giving us, you know, in exchange for the wall, we worked that little, not wall, the wall and the fence. You know, I just wanna make sure it meets your, I say that just to leave a little bit of room for you guys to take a look at it, and if there's anything else on there that you see, but I believe we're in compliance.
We had
Well,
the,
talked about last time.
we had, my comments I left in italics, they're just continuing from the various reviews, but, we do have that 25-foot landscape strip adjacent to Route 8 right away. And there was we talked about last time, the nice decorative fencing with the masonry columns that are being provided all along the Route 8 frontage as well as the frontage of the new access road. In my opinion, that's an acceptable alternative. I think the commission has sort of said that, but they should opine officially as they go forward with any sort of approval. But then there were some outstanding issues about the landscape planters, the end of each parking aisle, 5-foot prime facade, the west building elevation, and then just a calculation about the square footage of the landscape area. 3-foot tall vegetation screen around the masonry dumpster enclosure, and then just the plant materials being identified meeting the crossing standards. One thing I noticed quickly, I looked at that landscape plan tonight, there's no key, so I don't know like what those codes mean.
Okay.
Tell Jeff I say he did a very bad job. He can, it's just probably a layer in CAD or whatever he's gonna turn on.
Okay.
And maybe you said you submitted a revised one?
This was, yeah, so what, June 1st?
Oh yeah, that's when I have date stamped. I don't think there's a key on there that identifies what those landscape materials are. So.
Okay.
Off-street parking, this has been an issue all along about, you know, the number of spaces, you're short on the number of spaces, and then, to make up for that, you were seeking permission from the Great Escape.
Yes.
Which you have an email, from a Matthew.
He's the regional manager, Matthew Coughlin.
Yeah.
And we went out there, talked to him, you know, Mr. Delaney came with me and Mr. Hall, and we went out there, talked to him, and then subsequently emailed, just he followed up with that, and short of, you know, getting lawyers involved, you know, I think at the last meeting, everyone was okay with the parking situation as is. I wanted to get this just to be, you know, a good neighbor and make it, you know, abundantly clear that we've been in contact and we've got the okay and their blessing.
Of course, there's nothing permanent about that solution, right? Because
Correct.
the next guy come along could.
Correct,
vote.
but honestly, as I understood it at the last meeting, this was just in addition to our already, you know, it was already approved that it was okay to have that, the current number of parking. This additional parking is for, you know, high volume days or whatever, but yeah, you are correct.
Yeah, I mean,
It's not
you're
permanent.
deficient parking in the plan.
Yes,
So to avoid a variance, this is what we're looking at doing is a shared parking scenario.
yes,
Okay.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, that's,
And then, the mayor still had I think we still had that same concern about the one parking spot, that the sign it's like right up behind the sign, it's kind of a funky one. We talked about it on a conference call about compact space versus full size.
we left it in just because of the parking concern. I think one of the mayor's points was that, you know, he was saying that, well, it's even gonna be blocking your sign, our sign's gonna be slightly elevated. I don't think, you know, having an automobile there is gonna, really block the you know, visual, lines of the sign. And, you know, like I said, we left it in for parking concerns. You know, I mean, we could easily, do a compact or something like that, but, you know, currently we didn't wanna touch the number of spots.
Yeah. And then, I think this is the first time I've seen the primary building material. I mean, it's always graphically shown as brick, but, it was indicated on the plans as being a thin brick. So I just want to make sure the commission's okay with that. Typically, we've required a full masonry brick as opposed to like a quick brick or a thin brick, just to get that out to the commission. And then lighting levels are appropriate for the non-residential property lines. Just thought the commission should have some discussion about the style or type of lighting that you're using. I don't think I saw like a cut sheet or a schematic of it, like are there poles?
We're gonna have some poles around the property and then some, just lights off the building that are.
But are they like shoebox lights, the poles? How tall are they?
Honestly, I'd have to look at the drawings.
Maybe I missed it. I didn't see it on the lighting plan. Man, I saw the photometrics was plain as day. So that was just a question I had, was the type of lighting. Does it match the crossings? Is it, a certain style of lighting? Or again, is it a shoebox, which is not very attractive?
Yeah, so I know there's some decorative light poles for sure.
Okay.
In terms of the rest of the lighting, I couldn't tell you exactly without digging through here and on that.
And I could peek through when I'm done here. And then the landscape was an outstanding issue. Then the signage, you did touch on there. I had some concerns, and I still recommend that the signage come through as a separate package, like all the sign plans do.
That's fine.
Because there were notes that I was confused. It was talking about a primary and a secondary freestanding sign, a primary electronic message center, a secondary electronic message center. I said, man, we're going to know it's Culver's about 14 miles away. There's a lot of signs here, but I don't recall ever seeing any of those in the previous calculations, which is in italics. So I just recommend that any approval this evening from the commission exclude signage and just make it come through as a formal sign plan submittal. Then we're all on the same page of what is actually being approved. And that's all I had. And I can look in there for that light pole issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Applicant, I'm sure, is seeing my comment letter, and for the most part, they're all detailed engineering review comments, which, really are for the purposes of your design engineer more so than the purposes of the planning commission here. But there was one item, I guess, to touch on here, and whether or not this is an item for the planning commission to decide upon or not, I'm not really sure. On the back of the building, there's a patio that's shown. It's been shown for quite a while now. And it appears to indicate what I believe are some brick columns that, of course, would have a footer. That patio falls within a storm sewer, a drainage easement that's dedicated to the city. Under normal circumstances, a permanent structure is not allowed in a drainage easement, of course. So I guess the question becomes, what's the definition of a permanent structure? I mean, the building is not within the drainage easement, so we're good. But if we have a brick column fence with a footer, which I believe is what that is, does that constitute a permanent structure that normally wouldn't be allowed? And if that is the case, how do we go about it? I guess the first question is that true? Is it a...
Yeah, I spoke with our civil and our architect today about that.
Yeah.
They confirmed essentially that it goes, our footers go to the frost line,
Mhm.
and the drain is basically 6 feet underground.
Mhm.
So there's a gap between our footers and drain,
Mhm.
and they didn't seem to have an issue with it. I mean, it's not their
Well, yeah, it's not their call.
But you understand. I understand. Well, exactly. But they looked into that, and that was
Okay.
just for your information.
Okay.
So, I guess, Joe, is the point kind of, if it was landscaping, I mean, that's,
Yeah.
they need to access it, that's easy to tear up and.
Sure.
whether they can
A
direct-
parking lot, a driveway, of course, those go across drainage easements all the time.
This is
Worst
the
case
one-
scenario is you dig up the landscaping or you dig up the parking lot if you have to access the
Yeah.
storm sewer pipe, or in this case, the box culvert that's below. Happens,
It's a little more
but this one's a little
substantial
different,
Because
yeah.
we've got foundations and a patio. I mean,
Mhm. It seems more permanent to me.
It definitely is more permanent. I guess, if they had to access it, assuming vehicles can still get to the building, it's not something that's gonna shut down the business, like if the building was sitting on top, we can't tear open the building.
Sure.
It is able to be torn up and still operate and all those kind of things.
Mhm.
It's gonna be a real pain in the butt, and I assume it's a non-compensable type thing. If they got to get to their stuff and they're tearing up their patio,
Yeah.
I think if you're in the easement, if we approve this, you need to know, and we're mentioning here that, you know,
Falls on us.
it's gonna fall on you if they have a problem down there and they've got access and you've got
Sure.
something, you know, major on top of it.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's absolutely true, Chairman. If the city had to access the box culvert, I'm sure the city reserves the right to rip out the patio and not replace it. That's, you know, that's number one. And then I guess number two is, as the city are concerned about the construction of, I guess, what's a permanent structure working directly on top of our box culvert. Is it really designed for that? Do we want to subject it to, you know, to this construction?
I don't know if that's really something that
Yeah.
we can answer.
Yeah, and I don't know, like I say, I prefaced the whole thing by saying, I don't know if it's really a planning commission question or not. Maybe it's an administrative question more than anything. But I just want to call it to everyone's attention. You know, I don't want the restaurant to open and then all of a sudden everybody finds out there's a bunch of brick structures with concrete footers and foundations in our drainage easement, so.
With the crash protection for that patio,
Mhm.
it required every 4 feet.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if they're utilizing those columns between the fences, but those are below frost line.
Mm-hmm.
And
Sure.
they could use 4-inch pipe filled with concrete. So that's under section 312 or 315 of the fire code for crash protection.
Okay.
It's required for all the other buildings with outside patios.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I'm sure, yeah, so there again, yeah, there's more items that we're placing into the, well, not we, but Culver is placing into our drainage easement, so. No, it's storm.
Oh, storm. And that's granted us.
Yes.
Do your due diligence with your uncover.
I think we need to spell it out.
It is. I run restaurants. This is not my forte. I mean, every day it's something new.
We tear it out, that should all go.
Schultz, do you have?
The only comment was regarding the thin brick and understanding how it was gonna be applied or, how you're gonna turn the corners, that kind of thing.
As I understand it, there's special quarter pieces for all those, and it's essentially applied. I could be wrong. There's like a base rate put down, but it's still got the cement in between those. What the sample I saw looked like just like real brick, as far as we can tell. So it was a pretty common material. I gather.
Well, why aren't you using a full masonry brick? I mean, it's not a significant cost to do it. And you're putting in a foundation with a brick ledge. I was just curious.
To be honest with you, it's not a significant cost, but I think there is some savings there.
Oh, there is, yeah.
And we were, we don't have an unlimited budget. Like I said, this is our first project, and, every nickel and dime, we're counting. This fence and the wall was a big thing, and I think, we're into our 10% of our construction contingencies already, and we haven't even, started construction, so, that was one of the reasons.
So you had asked about that there are no lighting details, it just shows symbols.
Okay.
So that's why I mentioned it. Nothing about height of the structures, type of structure, look, feel, any of that. Ballast information. Typically that's in
The height, style.
yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily think it should hold it up if the commission agreed, but I definitely think it should be included in a final set of plans. And then, it actually reminded me as I looked in there, I had one additional comment. So you shouldn't have me look back at this stuff. Sheet A002, AO-02, shows the cross-section of the wall or a schematic view of the wall.
Correct.
And we had asked for that to be like a curvilinear to follow the entrance of the road as opposed to a straight
Correct.
wall section. So just want to make sure when you do your final revised plans, it'll be curved, yeah.
Yep, and lights on top, we've already, we identified.
Yeah, there'll be lighting
Yeah.
coming through each column all the way, yeah.
Correct.
And I agree, that definitely added a buck or two to your project.
We have resolved, I don't wanna, just need to bring this up, Mr. Gelati, the ODOT issue's been completely resolved in our grading, so we're, as far as all of your comments, I think, reading here, we're in compliance with all of them. We've applied for all this stuff, and, location of the knock box is, wherever they like.
We can do that when we get into that.
I guess the thin brick, I mean, from my standpoint, it looks fine. I mean, it looks like brick. Do you think this is acceptable? I actually saw what they're using
The
for the
sample?
corners.
Oh, you did?
You guys,
We
I
brought
saw
it in, yeah.
Well, that and you guys posted this on Builders Exchange to start to get some interest. I saw there was an addendum, and it was just about, one of them was specifically putting in these brick corner pieces. So I saw I looked up to see what that was. Okay, and then your comment came through, and I saw it. So that, they are, yeah, I mean, they're built to look like a
Exactly
brick.
like a
It's
corner of a
just,
brick.
yeah, I mean, it's not two flat pieces butted up, and you see a
Right.
crappy side over here. So from a visual standpoint, I'm okay with it, as long as we're okay with it. I know they've used it in other places in the city. If we would approve this, I guess some of the outstanding things, I mean, we would exclude signage. We would have an administrative review of landscaping, and we probably want to officially state that the decorative fencing and the monument sign, I think, is in exchange for the 25-foot setback along Route 8. But if you guys have other comments, let's get that out there, let's think about it.
Just, again, I'm having a hard time tonight because my hearing aid isn't, I don't have one working, but if we say there's an agreement, this patio, that we have to get at that sewer, culvert takes the responsibility to that's all, we gotta approve it that way, correct?
And I think, I was talking to the engineer, I mean, I think that's going to be an easement that's provided to the city, so it should be spelled out.
It's an existing easement.
Oh, it's an existing
Yes.
It's an
easement.
existing easement, so.
And we hold that easement?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was platted as part of the original subdivision, the original, when they built Golden Lake.
It should be modified as an addendum that Culvers understands that if it has to be torn up, that they're bearing the cost.
Understand.
Yeah,
But
I
that-
would agree, that would be nice to have that documentation, because, I mean, the likelihood of it ever occurring is pretty remote, but if it does
Never know.
happen, and the city's gotta dig it up,
Yeah.
whether it's Culver or a subsequent owner 10 or 20 years down the road,
Exactly.
we don't want the property owner, whoever it may be at the time, to come back to the city and say, you ripped out my patio, city, you have to put it back.
Yeah.
Because that's just not right. Because we know it up front that this drainage easement exists.
And it's good to have it in the minutes, I mean, it's good, but enforceable, it needs to be in the easement.
That's understandable.
Yeah.
So is that something we need to do with our motion, or is that just something?
I would.
Okay,
Yeah, I
mention
would-
that the easement should be modified to specifically mention these items.
Or an addendum to it, yeah.
Okay.
And as part of your approval. Cross the Ts, dot the Is, but that's a good thing just to cover for the city's sake.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, well, do you want me to try and make a motion?
Go for it.
All right.
Tony's good at this.
Make a, let's see, site plan approval, contingency that, the existing drainage easement is addended, for recognition that, you know, whatever's on top of it is going to be, or just basically addend the easement, for Calder's acknowledgement of the issues, I guess. Also want to note, that we are accepting the decorative fence and monument, sign in exchange for the 25-foot setback. What's that?
Landscape setback.
Yeah, landscape setback. Okay. Our approval is excluding signage. And includes an administrative review of the landscaping. And administrative review of the lighting details. And one more item I can think of is that the approval includes the recognition of the Great Escape letter permitting the shared parking.
That was an excellent job.
One of our longer motions.
Yeah, sorry. Anything else guys you can think of?
No, I think you got it.
All right, somebody want to second that?
Nothing to the fact that, anything about that didn't work then?
I think it's a plan detail, as long as we're okay with it, we don't have to, I mean, that's what's shown on the plan, so I think it should, doesn't need to. All right, so second. Second, all right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? No.
Thank you,
That's
gentlemen.
a big step.
Oh, man, yeah.
You have to come back just a minute.
Put balloons on my mailbox. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate all the work you guys have done. I mean, I know it's your part-time job is working with us, so.
It's an
Appreciate
important
it.
project.
Yep.
Very exciting to see.
Thank you very much.
We'll sign this and talk about it.
Iron Mike? Iron Mike.
Alright, so real quick, there's mention about a special meeting to see if, Cleveland Clinic, it's our fault that they couldn't come to us tonight, because we have to have 3 to vote on something. Missing Tony, which we found out yesterday, we're still missing a member, I can't vote on it, so we're down to 2, so we basically have, they city council today and said, don't come in, don't waste your time. But it sets them back a month, when they were ready to go, had their stuff submitted, and looking at the memos, it didn't sound like anybody had any real issue with this stuff. So they're asking if they can get a special meeting. I don't care, because I don't even have to come. I can't do anything.
You sent us.
You have to come chair the meeting.
Just kick it off and then.
And then walk out the door and leave the premises.
Great idea.
But, you know, so I'm looking, you know, were they looking at like the second, is that what they were
I
thinking?
just emailed you some. They didn't.
They didn't
give a
say,
date,
well, I
so-
mean, should,
but I
you
need
can
one second
actually,
to be fine.
do you have to post this or anything for a certain amount of time?
Yeah.
But I can't.
Like a public hearing?
I don't know the
Yeah. Sarah.
You can leave it running if you
Do I
want.
have to
It
post a special
doesn't
meeting
matter.
in the
You can
newspaper?
stop.
Do I have to post a special meeting in the newspaper prior to it happening? No.
So we're adding the plan commission, we don't have to do anything.
Right, you
Okay.
just put on your website, 24 hours notice, 18 hours, 24 hours, be safe. That's all.
Okay, so I mean, it could.
So in, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, so-
Did you already determine a date?
No, that's what we're talking about. I mean, it could be, you guys could do it much anytime you want to. I was looking, first I thought, okay, the 2nd, that's 2 weeks out, but that's also, 2 days before the 4th. I don't know if you guys are
A lot of
traveling.
people may be doing, yeah.
I don't know if you guys are traveling, I don't know what Tony's thoughts are, but I don't know if you guys are open to it, maybe,
I'll be around.
suggest a date, Susan, she could send something out to Tony and you guys. I don't know, whoever could make it, or whoever's concerned, I guess it's only the Cleveland Clinic as of right now. I'd like to keep it that way if I could, because then that wouldn't show up at all. You got your comments, I don't think anybody else had any
It was
comments.
just a sign, so I don't have any
Yours is
review.
probably self-explanatory, I don't know that you would need to be here.
Yeah, that's
So it's
fine.
really the 3 of you guys and Susan that needs to show up.
Yeah.
So between the 3 of you, if you don't,
I'm
if you guys
okay
wanna,
with July 2nd.
I mean, the 2nd, I mean, it could be the 25th, it could be next Monday. Brilliant, I'm sure could find somebody to come out here if we could get approved.
Well, the other thing is too, if you're just doing it for the clinic, you don't have to do it at 5:30 at night. You can do it during the day, 'cause I know a couple of you guys, right, are retired, Mr. Chavon. I mean, if it's-
We're all-
so if you can do it during the day, all you need is
Susan's
24
here during
hours.
the day.
Sit at 9 o'clock in the
24
morning on
hours
Friday.
notice.
Susan doesn't care. She's here all
She's
the
here
time.
during the day
And I
already.
honestly don't have to be here. It's
Just
pretty,
push her for 2 in the morning.
it's pretty, yeah, it's pretty,
Bar's closed.
pretty self.
That's when he does his best work.
So I'll let you 3 coordinate
Thanks.
that, I don't need to have anything to do with it. And you guys can set it, you can set it during the day, you can set it at night, whatever you wanna do, whatever's easiest, but it'd be nice to get them done since it was.
What do you guys think? Because then I can send an email out. Would you like a Monday during the day? Do you want to do it at like 9 o'clock? Would that be easier than
I
5:30?
know for a fact I have a doctor's appointment in the morning.
On July 2nd? Okay. What about the afternoon?
I'm fine.
Maybe afternoon's okay.
1 o'clock?
Yeah, that'd be all right.
1 o'clock, July 2nd?
Sure.
Let's see if Tony's available.
Yeah.
And then, really show that.
Based on Tony's,
Yeah, but that's what we need, yeah.
Yeah.
Because all you,
I will
all
send
you
an
need is
email out.
Joe's
one
gonna
thing
practice.
and
Chris,
you're-
Chris.
Joe's gonna practice how to run the meeting.
Yes, adjourn.
Not
Yeah.
yet, not yet.
Not yet, we still have to adjourn.
And then, can I just say to the commission, since I will likely not be here, the only issue on the signage are the color, you need to acknowledge the colors, okay,
Oh,
cause it's blue and green. And then, apparently the mayor doesn't have a concern with it, just so you're aware.
That can't be true.
It's true, he put it in writing, I'm shocked myself.
On the signage?
You might wanna double back, Chris, double
Yeah.
back and check with him. And then,
Yeah, I would verify.
Well, Chris can
yeah,
pray
sure.
for the meeting. He can be.
yeah, and then you just need to confirm the tenant space, I think they're fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you read the memo, you can see.
What are they gonna do about the parking in the back?
That was approved, I thought. Wasn't it?
Yeah, they're gonna eliminate that one space. I think.
Looking at the
They
mem,
want one
the
space.
minutes, I think.
Yeah.
That's the one that you wanted. I think.
Yeah, the one by the
Cleveland
right.
Clinic, they eliminated it.
They eliminated
Yeah,
it.
they eliminated it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just started their sprinkler system, so there's no rush. You know, I don't know when they expect to be done, but they got a lot of work.
Cleveland Clinic?
Yeah.
I thought they said they were opening on Wednesday.
Huh?
He didn't tell you which Wednesday though.
No,
No.
I don't know.
All right, anything else? Hopefully the mayor can fill that last seat so we don't have this issue.
Oh, I think we did.
Yeah, so one person doesn't show up. and
He did say he's
you
working.
She's got,
Yeah.
yeah, she makes me ramen and sausage.
guys have anything else?
Peppers and
All right.
onions.
I'm with you, Joe.
Mashed potatoes.
Awesome.
You got it, mashed potatoes when you have meatloaf.
All in favor? Aye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know where that word is. Yeah.
Good summary.
I didn't think you get it. I didn't think they gave you credit card.
Hey, good old Dave.
Oh, yeah, I can understand why.
Oh, my God. I had an issue with him over there, and